Today we'll look at the 2024 paper. Question number 1 reads, describe Wilson's 3 managerial categories and explain the practical significance of research findings. Define the term managing diversity and explain why it is important in relation to the types of programs used today. And 6 of the 9 competencies required to work effectively across cultures. And what are the key features of effective ethics training programs, and distinguish among uncertainty, the effect of uncertainty in response to uncertainty in the context of decision making. So in the field of management, we must understand that any manager, to be effective, they not only should know what to do, but they should apply the knowledge in practical work situations. So management, we have scholars like Robert Katz of 1995. We also have Wilson. These are two scholars that emphasize that a successful manager would need a combination of the technical, the human, and conceptual skills. And these ones are categorized into 3 main competences. So who remembers the 3 categories of skills? So these skills can be categorized, number 1, into technical skills. What are technical skills and what are involved in technical skills? So technical skills really talk about the ability to abilities and knowledge needed to perform specialized tasks. Okay, so for you to be an accountant, for you to be um, a lab technician, those are technical skills. They are far beyond operational skills. So one person must have. What other skills do we know of? For the 3 categories. I've studied one of them for you. So these are the 3 fundamental categories wherever you go in managerial skills. So we have the technical, we have the human, and we have the conceptual skills. So when dealing with the technical skills, they refer to a specific knowledge or ability that one requires to perform tasks within a particular discipline. You guys are doing MBA, finance, others general. So these technical skills will differ by field and may include additional skills like accounting, budgeting, financing, operations, lab technician, software engineering. Okay, and these skills are specific. Their importance is that number 1, they have an element of supervision and evaluation. So managers with these solid technical skills can effectively oversee their subordinates. So they will be able to assess the performance. They'll be able to ensure that they adhere to standards. They also should have problem solving efficiency. Problem solving efficiency. So this skill will enable you to um, diagnose an operational problem and also devise a solution. So we discover that people that have gone to school and those that haven't, there's a very big gap between them. So you people who are being trained, the gap between your planning and execution is different from those that haven't gone to school. And there are also abilities for line supervisors and operational managers is critical for such in that field. Okay, so we have the key part number 1, technical skills. So what other field have we talked about? The other category did we talk about?
I think you mentioned the human skills.
It's human skills.
The human or interpersonal skills. What is involved in the human and interpersonal skills? So human and interpersonal skills give you the ability to work with others. Okay, so this is one skill that is different from the other 3, where one person must have that ability to effectively relate with others, communicate with people, have that empathy and leadership imbued in them. So the interpersonal skills, the human skills, are there to foster collaboration. So examples of the skills embedded would be effective communication, having the ability to articulate ideas clearly, motivation to inspire your employees to perform at their best, negotiation and conflict resolution, having the skill of managing disagreements constructively, team leadership, where you have to guide and coordinate the teams towards a shared goal, empathy, where you have to understand the perspectives and emotions. All right. So, what are the importances of these human skills? So, these human skills are important because they foster collaboration and mutual respect. They are essential for conflict resolution. They are required at all levels of management. We are not robots. We relate with people. So they are very important because they'll build that team cohesion, and effective interpersonal skills will foster cooperation in an environment. So managers who communicate openly, whether good or bad, will show empathy and unite people. Conflict management. So in any workplace, differences of opinion are there. So, and are inevitable. So managers with strong human skills should be able to mediate these disputes and promote an understanding. They should have an ability of motivation and engagement. So human skills are vital for motivating what? Employees, recognizing that these individuals have contributions, okay, in whatsoever category. Leadership, managers should have that ability. Okay, quickly, the last um level is what? Type of skill. What did I say? The last type of skill?
Conceptual.
Yes, conceptual. So what is involved in the conceptual? What is involved in the conceptual? So when I'm dealing with conceptual skills, we're basically looking at ability to view the organization as a unified system, to understand how the various components in the organization interact internally as well as with the outside world, the external environment. So these skills will allow you as a manager to grasp the complex situations, identify what relationships among different elements exist. You need to formulate long-term strategies. You guide on the direction that the organization has. So conceptual skills will manifest in strategic thinking, where you plan, you formulate visions and long-term, like you create a conceptual framework in research. You need to create logic frameworks, systems that will work, where they're interdependent systems in the organization. You will conduct skills like environmental scanning, where you're going to assess the external opportunities and threats. You're also going to have skills manifesting in innovation and creativity. You develop new solutions, new business models. You have the ability of risk and change management. You have to anticipate these uncertainties and how to adapt in this ever-changing environment. So these skills are important because number one, they help in propagating the strategic direction. So conceptual ability that managers will have will enable them to design these frameworks that will align with organizational goals. They have a holistic understanding. Such managers have a big picture. They have what we call a blueprint. They're like a builder. They have a blueprint of how the organization, in terms of marketing, in terms of finance, in terms of all departments, will contribute to the overall success. So, it is important that these skills enhance decision making under certainty. So, conceptual thinkers are better equipped to make sound decisions, even when there's an ambiguous circumstance. All right. So, these are the three. Um, should know how to expand them and conceptualize them. Are we together? So, we are done with the aspect of defining them and their significance when it comes to the research findings. Anyone behind? It's clear. So, question number two, define the term managing diversity and explain why it's particularly important in relation to the types of programs used today. The term managing diversity, what does that term mean? Managing diversity. And why is it important? Anyone in your own terms? Managing diversity simply is a deliberate term that looks at how the organization recognize the differences that exist. We are different humans, and diversity is inevitable. So managing diversity, basically we're looking at what? Managing the concept of managing the diversity. What are we looking at? Ability to manage different humans. Okay, we are different in thought, in perspectives. So managing diversity is an international strategic effort by organizations to recognize, to respect, to value individual differences among employees, and to use these differences as a source of what? Innovation, as a source of creativity and competitive advantage. So managing diversity extends just beyond compliance and legal requirements like equal employment opportunity. It expands beyond affirmative action of programs. So instead of focusing on inclusive organization culture where employees feel respected, valued, or empowered fully. In simple terms, when talking about managing diversity, we're looking at how embracing the heterogeneity that exists in a workplace. When you're talking about heterogeneity, it's a correct opposite of homogeneity. Homogeneity is same, heterogeneity is different. So it acknowledges that every employee would differ in terms of their background, their beliefs, their abilities, and their capabilities. So these differences, if and when they are managed, they'll enhance uh, the corporate or organizational performance. So there are key aspects that are involved when you're dealing with managing diversity. Number one, there's an aspect of recognizing the uniqueness that an individual has. Okay. Also removing the systematic barriers of inclusion. Aspect of promoting fair treatment, equal access to opportunities, ability of diversity as a driver of innovation. So in modern terms, managing diversity will encompass two key things: equity and inclusion. So it ensures that all employees, regardless of status, have equitable access to opportunities. Managing diversity can be applied to a recent case where the president has his own son go in the army. How are you going to treat that? Okay, being a status of the highest office, managing diversity. It can be the extreme opposite. So the dimensions that we look at, we have what we call the primary dimension and secondary dimension. Primary dimension, these are inherent and mostly unchangeable attributes like age, race, gender, ethnicity, physical ability, and sexual orientation. So the primary is actually the core diversity. It's the innate characteristic that individuals have. It's one's identity. They significantly talk about the influence that individuals have on the perception of themselves and how others perceive them. So when talking about age, the different age groups, they bring the diverse experiences and technological adaptability levels. Gender, inclusion of all gender who promote a balanced decision making and equity. Race and ethnicity, looking at cultural backgrounds, how they influence perspectives in terms of language and problem solving. Physical ability and disability, so access to accommodation and ensure there's equal participation. Sexual orientation, respect for our personal identity and attributes. You have gay rights now, so how do we perceive this? So these are, in short, the innate, okay, the diff the aspects that people have embedded in themselves. We can't change about them. So examples I have mentioned. We have the secondary dimensions, which include dimensions that are acquired over time. Okay, these ones can change through personal experiences, through education, through circumstances. So these shape how individuals interpret situations. For instance, an education background. So how you perceive things now that you are attaining a master's degree is different from how you would perceive things in a workplace or scenario. Marital status, this is a secondary dimension. You can change status. Income level is changeable. Religious beliefs, these are changeable. Workplace experience, communication style, and geographic location. So we're talking about secondary dimensions. We're looking at dimensions that are acquired over time. Is that clear? Are we together? So what is the importance of managing diversity? Why should we be talking about managing diversity? So it is important to understand as a manager because the strategic business identity is imperative. You need to understand this to propagate the health of the organization as a whole. It's important, number one, uh, because of globalization and workplace mobility. So in this global economy, companies employ individuals from different nations. I'm sure some of you have bosses who are Zimbabweans. By the way, Zimbabweans have very good work ethics they produce. So managers therefore must lead these multicultural teams effectively. So they must learn the different perspectives to contribute to the success. PEP stores, for instance, I've interacted with students from there. It's a company policy that the head should not be an indigenous. So the Zambian head will head Malawi. Malawi maybe will be Zambian or Zimbabwean. That is how it is. So you need to embrace the differences. Innovation and creativity. So diverse teams are more creative because they bring together these different problem solving approaches. So research shows that organizations with gender and ethnic diversity actually outperform the homogeneous teams. So homogeneous teams, the same gender, same, So diverse thinking will challenge such assumptions. Then the other one is that of legal and ethical compliance. So many countries, including Zambia, have now enacted laws in workplaces that will deter discrimination. So managing these diverse issues is in compliance with what the legal requirements. Is that clear? So we are done with part B. All right, so identify the 6 main of the 9 competencies required to work effectively across cultures. 6 of the 9. Okay. So what are these challenges? Explain the 6 of the 9 competencies required to work across cultures. What are they?
I think the first one of them is culture adaptability.
Okay. Culture. Okay. Look at the major cross-cultural competences. Uh-huh. Yes, culture awareness, number 1. Number 2, let's discuss the 6 of the 9 competences required to work effectively across cultures. So we have culture, self-awareness, tolerance of ambiguity, empathy, interpersonal communication. Okay. So we must understand to start with that in the era of globalization, many organizations will operate in multiple cultural boundaries. So managers must require or acquire these cross-cultural competences in order for them to effectively interact in order for them to respectively engage. So the cultural competences or cultural competence is actually the ability to navigate, the ability to adapt into the different cultures in a way that will build trust, cooperation, and mutual understanding. So there's a framework that was formulated by Hofstede. We call them Hofstede's cultural dimensions. Okay, we've heard of them. So these ones actually highlight how that cultures would differ in terms of power, in terms of distance, in terms of uncertainty, in terms of masculinity, in terms of time orientation. So managers must interpret these cultures in the cultural lenses. So we'll talk about them one by one. So you can make a formula. I have no time to make formulas for now for you to remember. So we're being asked to just talk about 6 of these ones. So number 1, we have the, okay, you can see them. Number 1, we have which one?
Culture self-awareness.
Mm-hmm. Cultural self-awareness. What does it talk about?
Understanding the culture, and how it affects you and the people around.
Okay. Yes, cultural self-awareness, the starting point of cross-cultural competency involves you understanding your own cultural value first, your beliefs, your biases. Then next step is you understand other people's culture. So if you're a Zambian manager of Pep stores, you need to value collective decision making. Okay? So if you value collective decision making, whilst Europeans, on the other hand, they expect individual initiative. So self-awareness will help avoid projecting one's norm into others. So it will promote humility and will prevent biasness. So there are certain things that other cultures may perceive is known about Africans. Okay? So cultural self-awareness is understanding one's own culture biases and how um, they can affect the interactions. I was telling the other class, those of you who follow Trevor Noah, there was one time he was doing a birthday comic of somebody who came late. And so in his discourse of finding out, he discovered it was a Nigerian. He's like, "Oh, why didn't you tell me you were Nigerian?" Because it is a norm for Nigerians to come late. And so you are late because not because of traffic, but because of your background. So you learn people's cultures. What I'm trying to say is that you need to understand firstly your own cultural biasness, so that when you go there, you know what people know about you. So these are cross-cultural competences. Okay, there are 9, only 6 are supposed to talk about. The second one is what? Tolerance for ambiguity. Tolerance for ambiguity. So, working across cultures will often involve uncertainties, contradictions, and unclear social cues. So, you must abhor tolerance for ambiguity. So, tolerance for ambiguity is simply ability to remain calm, to remain effective or unprovoked in such unpredictable situations. For instance, a manager on an assignment in India, they may encounter changing meeting times, okay, indirect communication rather than becoming frustrated. Tolerance will allow adaptation and patience. So, benefit in the managerial perspective is that it will reduce cultural shock and you enhance flexibility in problem solving. So, you tend to understand how that these people, this is their norm. Not that you must harbor such bad traits. So the other is that of empathy. Empathy is simply seeing things from another's cultural perspective. Quickly, interpersonal communication, you need to adjust both verbal and non-verbal cues to fit cultural context. flexibility, and adaptability. So changing behavior and expectation based on the cultural norms. And open-mindedness. So open-mindedness is non-judgmental attitude, okay, where you accept differences without stereotyping. Emotional resilience. Can you somebody explain on emotional resilience? Emotional resilience. Okay. So we can remember these the word factor. You can use factor to remember any 6 of them, cultural competences. So factor stands for what? FECTOR. Factor cultural competences. So F stands for flexibility and adaptability. Okay. E for empathy. C for cultural self-awareness. And T, you can look at tolerance. O, you can look at open-mindedness. So you must accept the differences without stereotyping or ethnocentrism. R, you can talk about R stands for what? Resilience or emotional. So here managing stress and learning effectiveness. So these letters will just help you remember. Okay, so these are the 6 out of the 9 cross-cultural competences. So F for flexibility and adaptability, the ability to adjust behavior and expectations to cultural norms. E, we can use empathy, seeing from another's cultural view. And C for self-awareness, knowing your own biasness, being effective in multicultural context. T, tolerance for ambiguity, you need to comfort with uncertainty and unfamiliar cultural situations. And O, open-mindedness and non-judgment, and to accept cultural differences without prejudice. And R for resilience, emotional, need to manage stress and manage effectiveness across cultural interactions. Okay, so we're done with question number 1. Okay, just remembered, I think this is not a question we did. It's a different year. Didn't do this with you. All right, so everything is already in the pamphlet, but even as you read on your own, it may be important that we go through together. Any questions on question number 1? Okay, question number 2. I only have 5 minutes, so I'll be quick. Number 2, number 1, but A simply says define the term strategic management and explain its relationship to strategic planning and control, and describe and explain decision making and specify the 8 sources of decision complexity for modern managers. And number C, describe the 7 people centered practices that was identified by FIFA. So which part do you remember? Okay, so part A is asking us to do what? To define the term strategic management and explain the relationship to strategic planning and implementation. So what is strategic management and how is it related to strategic planning Okay, I'll be quick there. Summarize this, you can check through the pamphlet. So strategic planning by definition is what? Strategic planning by definition, it can be defined as a continuous process of accessing an organization's internal strengths and weaknesses, scanning the external opportunities and threats. That is strategic management. So it's a process of analyzing the environment, setting long-term goals, implementing strategies, and controlling performance. Okay? So that is the definition of strategic management. So what is the relationship between strategic planning, implementation, and control? What is the relationship between strategic planning, implementation, and control? So strategic planning, implementation, and control, the relationship is that strategic management is equal to planning, implementation, and control. So strategic planning is simply the formulation phase where you're going to analyze the environment, you're going to set objectives. Implementation is simply the action phase where you're going to execute the strategies from the programs. The control phase is simply the monitoring phase and making corrective decisions. So examples of strategic planning, you want to choose a market entry or cost. Action is you would do the staff training. Control, you use the KPIs to check performance. So the relationship is that adding all these up, they make what's called strategic management. So integration of these ones will ensure that you align with organizational goals. All right. That is how quickly you can summarize that. So describe and explain decision making and specify the 8 sources of decision complexities for modern managers. So what are they? What is decision making and what are the 8 components that we can talk about? What is the definition of decision making? So decision making is simply what? Selecting the best course of action amongst the many available options. So that is decision making. You want to select the best course of action amongst the available alternatives. So the 8 sources of decision making in a complex world are: number 1, environmental uncertainty. So the rapid changes will make unpredictability of outcomes difficult. For instance, political and economic instability. Globalization is also another important source of decision complexity for modern managers. All right, globalization. So decisions must fit this diverse cultural and legal context. So you need to adjust your marketing for different countries. Then we have cultural change. Innovation demands that you make frequent updates and strategy. So as a manager, you need to develop new AI systems. Then information overload. If there's too much data, it complicates decision accuracy. It filters analytics. Then we also have stakeholder diversity, ethical issues, organizational complexities, and time pressure. So these are all sources of the 8 sources of decision complexity for modern managers. So we end here. We'll meet tomorrow again. Please read this pamphlet. It will simplify your work. We end here. Have a good evening.